Welcome to the premiere episode of the It Came from Generation X podcast. I'm Tom Dieboldt, coming to you live from the Forbidden Zone.
Hey guys, I'm Sam Weller, dialing in from the bunker at Area 451.
So every week we're going to look at different aspects of pop culture through the lens of our own generation, which is Generation X. That means we're going to talk rock and roll, movies, comic books, television, literature, game shows, video games, role-playing, commercials, cartoons, anything and everything under the sun. We look at the shows and occasionally high-minded, often hilarious deep dive into pop culture for miscreants who came of age during the 80s just like us.
We hope it's funny. So just for some context, Gen Xers were born roughly around 1965 to roughly 1980. That's the window of Generation X. And they're often synonymous with pop culture. And there's a reason for this, myriad reasons, in fact. There were a shit ton of seismic cultural shifts occurring during that time that Gen Xers were children. They had more working mothers at that time. I think they were coming out of a very turbulent time in the United States in particular, with the assassinations of our political and civil rights leaders, the Vietnam War, Watergate. And so I think for a number of reasons, Generation X flocked to popular culture as sort of a balm, if you will, something to comfort them. We're, as Tom said, pretty much gravitating to TV, cartoons, comics, music. These are all things that entertain us that we'll be talking about week in, week out on It Came from Generation X.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the advent of music videos. They often call, before they came up with Generation X, we were the MTV generation. So, but I'm glad we got Generation X out of that. We saw the advent of home computers and video games at home. It was such a rush for us being that age and having this at our fingertips. It was amazing. The emergence of iconic music genres then. You no longer just had, rock and roll. You got heavy metal, you got punk, you got R&B, rap, new wave. And with the explosion of MTV, it was just sonic overload for us.
Yeah, along with this came massive amounts of marketing, which had not really been done before up until that point. We're talking unseen levels of consumerism, action figures, trading cards, posters, T-shirts, bedroom decor, all the shit you buy now started back then.
Yeah. And we grew up in front of the TV, and on a good day, you'd watch Price is Right in the morning all the way through afternoon cartoons, and you'd end up Miami Vice at night. We went on to embrace indie culture, indie films, book publishers, underground artists like Robert Crumb, Weird Stuff, Wacky Packages, Garbage Pail Kids. And now Gen X has grown up. We're the parents now, and we're media influencers now. Nostalgia for our childhood is part and parcel of our ethos. Hello, Barbie movie,
Totally. And each week on It Came from the Generation X podcast, we'll be looking at different aspects of popular culture and really why the hell any of it really matters. Does it even matter?
It does matter.
Totally. That's why we're doing this.
Right. But, this being our first episode, this week we're going to start with a pop culture touchstone, a phenomenon all in itself, really, that kind of, brought you and I together. And that was, Kiss, man. Was there anything bigger or better for, 8 to 10-year-old at that time?
Kiss was superheroes with guitars, spandex superheroes personified. They started in New York. Their first show was January 30th, 1973 at what was then the Popcorn Club in Long Island. It was actually in the process of changing its name to Coventry. As memory serves correct, so it was January 3rd, 30th, 1973. There were 10 people in the audience as Kiss took to the stage Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley, not yet fully developed into the Kiss that would later become this sort of cultural
Right.
phenomenon. Um, but they took to the stage that night, and there were roughly about 10 people in the audience. One of them, interestingly enough, according to legend and his own words, was Joey Ramone.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
I know.
That's really
What else
cool.
would you,
And I mean,
what else would you say about Kiss, Tom, in terms of what they added to the pop cultural lexicon?
well, I mean, as you touched on already, marketing. I think Kiss blew the roof off of how you can market a band. Gene Simmons,
Totally.
I love to hate the man, but he was a genius.
Yeah, completely. So the first three albums dropped, the self-titled record, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill, within a span of like 2 years. They sold moderately well, but cumulatively not
Yeah.
even close to 500,000. And then, uh, kind of on a wing and a prayer, they were touring in a station wagon across America. Their
Oh,
costumes were developing. Their personas had been established. We now have the Demon, the Star Child, the Catman, and the Spaceman. On September 10th, 1975, sort of taking a total gamble, they decided to release a double live album in a last-ditched effort at success, really bucking the trend because live albums at that point were not known as big sellers. But Kiss really had not captured their sonic, bombastic live sound on those
right.
first three studio albums. So they went ahead and recorded and released Kiss Alive.
And I think that probably came on the heels with the success of UFO Strangers in the Night. That was a really popular live album. And I think that probably put in Gene's mind, or Bill Alcoin's, hey, we can do this too, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that led the way to records like Frampton Comes Alive and other live
Yep.
albums that really became these huge sellers. But Alive was released, as I said, in September of 1975. It was recorded, said to be recorded at Cobo Hall in Detroit, but it was recorded roughly in 4 different locations with
Yeah.
studio touch-ups that have become kind of controversial in the land of Kiss fandom.
Right.
But nobody releases a live album except maybe punk rock artists who don't care about mistakes, sloppiness.
Yeah, there's
You
an eight
can't.
track on the stage and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. You can't be breathing fire and stomping around in 7-inch platform shoes and jumping around and not hit a wrong note. So there were studio touch-ups with Alive. Some would say there was more than that. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The
No.
album is a snapshot of what the band does live, and really at their live height. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah. And then to follow it up with the next three records, that's when they knocked it out of the park. And I think that's when Gene Simmons, and I would imagine Paul Stanley and, Bill Alcoin went, we've got something here and we can market that, and then you got your Kiss the Face makeup, you got action figures, you got everything, and it was brilliant. TV deals, Paul Lynde specials, Friday, they did it all.
Yeah, and I've often said that the costumes became more elaborate, the stage shows became incredible. I mean, they really led the way with pyrotechnics, light up stage logos, dry ice, lighting, and just you name it. Just phenomenal stage production that really blew the gates open for what we see today
Yeah.
with artists doing live. But with this massive success, as Gene and Paul will often say, started to become cracks and fissures in the Kiss machine, as it were, with drugs and alcohol, leading up to what I say is kind of when they jumped the shark, so to speak, the release in the fall of 1978 of the NBC movie of the week, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Yeah. Yep. And that was, I mean, talk about your pinnacle. I'm sure for them, they were like, oh my God, we've got an NBC movie of the week with Anthony Zerbe. This is going to be fantastic. And I know it's not what they imagined, and it just crashed and burned around them. I loved it, but I was 10.
Yeah, me too. And
you know,
it's comically hilarious and has since become this sort of cult classic.
Probably the
People
only
love
thing
it.
Israeli was right about.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
know. It's hilarious. It's unintentionally absolutely hilarious. The special effects are terrible. It's produced by the same team that brought us Scooby Doo. Uh, in
and
fact,
it shows.
talk about Peter's voice.
It's the Hulk on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It's the same voice.
Why?
I don't. Peter has a great voice. I think a speaking voice. What was
He
wrong with
does.
Ace? Used his voice.
Yeah, that Ace's
Nobody's
voice
got
is
a
weird.
weirder regular voice than Ace.
I think Peter was probably off doing too many lines of cocaine. um,
Well, he was with Ace, and I love that part of Ace's book where whenever he talks about Kiss Meets the Fan with the Park, he's just driving around the set ripped in a golf cart and like pulling up right before they say action. So it's
I think that's the
fantastic.
way Ace operated throughout the entirety of his career.
I
He
think
was
so.
pulling up drunk right before somebody says action.
Pour me out of the car. Let's go. But it worked.
uh, yeah, no, it's absolutely hilarious. It's priceless, and they went on to do much, much more, which we're going to
Oh
talk
yeah, I
about
mean,
today.
what we're gonna do with the first episode is just kind of because it's the 50th anniversary and the end of the road for them. They're done in December. The last two shows are in December. So I think, just kind of want to celebrate, all things Kiss. Down the road, come back. We're gonna have, we're always gonna bring it back to Kiss because there's enough stuff there to fill shows with. You know.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to say is that this is not a Kiss podcast. This is a pop cultural podcast. We've got things lined up for subsequent weeks that are cartoon oriented, television oriented,
Yep.
films, uh, toys, you name it. But
Yep.
we will regularly come back to Kiss because Kiss is really the thing that brought Tom and I together as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a mutual admiration society that we love them.
Yeah.
So we will regularly come back and do specific episodes around specific topics in the Kiss world just because we love Kiss.
Yep.
And we're in charge of this show and we can do that. But you're right. This is their 50th anniversary. The last two shows, I think, are December 1st, December 2nd at Madison Square Garden. So they say. Last time I looked on eBay, like excellent tickets were around $17,000 for
Jesus.
premier tickets up front. It's crazy.
Remember when we joked about possibly going to that?
Yeah, yeah. Not with that, you'd have to sell an organ.
Do it, do
And I'm
it,
not.
do it like they did that New Year's Eve show in Dubai and stream it.
Yeah, I hope they stream it, but it seems like they don't. I've heard nothing about that, so
No.
hopefully they do. Hopefully they do. So we're celebrating Kiss today, 50 years of Kiss, the end of the road,
Yep.
and we have a very special guest joining us, and we'll be back in a moment with our special guest to welcome him to the It Came from Outer Space. Ray Bradbury reference. The It Came from Generation X podcast,
Yes.
and we'll be back. So we'll be back in a moment. Welcome to It Came from Generation X, our premiere episode of our podcast. I'm Sam Weller.
I'm Tom Dieboldt.
And we are absolutely thrilled today to welcome our guest, Michael Brandvold. Michael is a juggernaut in so many ways. Forgive me, Michael, don't blush. But Mike's an award-winning marketing consultant. He's managed the marketing efforts for musicians and bands and record labels, restaurants, bars, even construction companies, authors, conservation groups, nonprofit foundations, just to name a few industries. He's absolutely, as you look really into Michael's vita, he is really a visionary. He's the CEO and founder of Michael Brandvold Marketing. He helps the marketing efforts of up and coming indie artists of all genres, helping oversee their online marketing presence. He's worked with our subject today, the mighty rock band Kiss, among others, Brittney Spears, Madonna, Dream Theater, I believe WASP. He had Blackie Lawless on one of his two podcasts. Mike is the founder and co-host of Three Sides of the Coin. I think personally the finest Kiss podcast out there, but also hosts a Music Weekly podcast, which is really a great specific deep dive into the music industry, music marketing. It's just beneficial to bands, marketing writers, publicists, anybody in that industry. It's just absolutely phenomenal. In addition to spearheading digital strategy creations for bands and other clients, he handles online social media management for them, and creates marketing strategies that have literally earned artists millions of dollars. I hope some of that money, Mike, has trickled your way to you and your family.
Penny or two.
We're so pleased you take the time to come out. Tom and I, like you, grew up in the 70s, massive Kiss fans. And so we thought we're going to be visiting a different pop cultural topic every week, from Saturday morning cartoons to comic books to film, toys, commercials, just different stuff that's kind of part and parcel of Generation X. But we thought we would kick this thing off with the thing that really brought Tom and I together as friends 40 years ago, and that's our love and affection for Kiss. And we thought, who better to have on if we could get him than Michael Brandvold, who I'll let you tell your story in terms of you've worked for Kiss. You had your own Kiss website in the 90s, Kiss Otaku, if memory serves correct.
Correct.
It's just phenomenal. And I think it's also one last thing that's really worth saying is that while so many bands today look for new revenue streams because physical sales of albums, CDs, etc., are so paltry, you back in 2003 introduced sort of the meet and greet thing that we know so well now, that's so endemic to the whole industry, of artists setting up opportunities to meet, greet, take photos, sign instruments, different packages, different tier systems. And that's something that you brought to Kiss in 2003 that is really spread we could say wildfire or gonorrhea. But it's just, that's something that you saw the writing on the wall way 20 years ago, and it's now really part of the industry. So with all that said, welcome. I think we'd like to start, Mike, just by hearing your Kiss origin story. How did Kiss come into your life?
Yeah.
All the way back around 1976. I don't have an older brother or sister, so no family member was introducing me to music. It was, friends, neighborhood kids that I would hang out with. And my mom had joined the RCA record club, and she told my sister and I we could each pick one record out of the record club, and she'd get it for us. And honestly, I hadn't found any bands or music or anything that I was a fan of yet. I'd started buying anything random that I would find at garage sales. But I remember my best friend across the street had mentioned Kiss a couple times. And I just said, oh, okay, let me see what they got here. Kiss. Hey, that album cover Rock and Roll Over looks pretty cool. Here, I'll get this one. Never been exposed, never heard anything, nothing.
Cool.
And, I still, to this day,
Wow.
When I play Rock and Roll Over, the first track on side one, I Want You, anytime that song starts playing, I'm instantly taken back to dropping the record needle on my parents' big console stereo system and just hearing the and then, the quiet of I Want You, and then it just kicks in. I'm immediately taken back every single time I hear that song. And then, you know, I don't know the exact time frame, but it was sometime around there. I then was like, oh, Kiss is going to be on this Paul Lynde Halloween special. Okay, let's watch that. And I just remember watching it, and I can only, I never saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I'm not a Beatles fan. I sort of fall in that era after the Beatles kind of broke up. I have total respect for them, but the Paul Lynde special was like my Beatles on Ed Sullivan moment. I was watching that and my eyes were bugging out. My jaw was dropped. I was probably 12 years old or something around that point in time. And it was just like, what am I seeing here? What am I hearing? I mean, obviously it was fully lip sync. And, looking back on it now, sure, it's a very cheesy show. It's got dancers and costumes and, but the other thing that really brought me into it as well was, and we, before we hit record, I've got my Sid and Marty Krofft shirt on. 𝗚𝗏𝗻 from was also on that, along with the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. So it was sort of like, and as a kid, I grew up on all those Sid and Marty Krofft shows. Mm-hmm. They were my Saturday morning routine. Yeah. So between those shows and discovering Kiss, and looking back, both those creative elements were very much in the same vein. I mean, it was costume characters, it was superhero, it was, I mean, Sid and Marty Krofft had singing in all of their shows, HR Puff and stuff, the Bugaloos. But when I watched that Paul Lynde special and I saw Kiss, I was just like, this is a band. This is completely different than anything I'd even started to get exposed to at that point in time. It's like fire breathing and costumes and crazy boots, and the songs were amazing. And I think from that moment on, I was permanently hooked at that point in time.
And you never looked back?
Never. I mean, I've never stopped being a Kiss fan. I've never stopped supporting them. Yeah, there's been periods in my fandom where I lost interest in certain things that they were doing, but it was Kiss. I mean, Kiss is, I will always be there to support Kiss no matter what they do, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's, it just has a very special place in my upbringing as a child and ultimately as an adult.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Same way. That's a gorgeous story. I mean, I was lucky enough to have an older brother who was in a Kiss cover band, and turned me on to Kiss. But I love your Rock and Roll Over story because that is probably my favorite Kiss record. So
yeah, it's still my favorite. I mean, sure, there's always something to the first album of the band you love, the first album you hear by the band you end up loving. But in this case, I couldn't have gone wrong with Rock and Roll Over as that first album I ever got by these guys. I mean, prior to that, I had never listened or heard anything from first three albums from Kiss Alive. I mean, I started Rock and Roll Over. I then went and found Destroyer. Then I got Alive 2. Then I started like, oh, wow, they've got all these other albums. Let's go back and get all these other albums. So, unlike some Kiss fans who were there from 74 or 75, exposed to that early Kiss, that wasn't it for me. My exposure to Kiss was Super Kiss.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Right.
Yeah, my first purchase was Destroyer, and then it was Dress to Kill, then Alive. I mean, it's funny how we can remember the order in which we purchased these albums. You're raising so many different stream of conscious things to me right now. I find something that's spectacular about that Paul Lynde Halloween special is the fact that two remarkable eras of popular culture collided, and you named it. We've got the Wicked Witch, Margaret Hamilton, from the 1939 film on the same set as Gene Simmons of Kiss. Two decidedly different eras of entertainment, the pinnacle, really, of entertainment. Arguably one of the greatest movies ever made. And to me and to Tom, and I think to you, Mike, one of the greatest rock bands ever made or ever to be. Certainly the greatest entertainers, changed the industry of rock entertainment, coinciding and crossing paths on a special hosted by a guy like a comedian from the Hollywood Squares. I mean, it's just so surreal.
I mean, that whole show, when you look back at it, I mean, it had the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. It had Witchy Poo from H.R. Puff and stuff. It had
Roz from Happy Days.
Roz from Happy Days. It had what's her name from the Brady Bunch. Florence Henderson was on there. I mean, if you were a kid in the mid 70s, those were everything that was part of your life. Happy Days was there, and H.R. Puff and stuff, and The Wizard of Oz, and maybe not. You may not have know much about Kiss because again, it was 76. They were only 3 years old at that time as a band.
Amazing.
But it was, and okay, I mean, Paul Lynde, I mean, coming home from school, you turn on the TV after school, and eventually you're going to have a Hollywood Squares episode.
Yeah.
And Paul Lynde was, I mean, he was the comedian of that decade back then. He was the peak. Thing. He was big. I mean, and it wasn't his only TV special he's done, but that was our childhood wrapped up in a perfect TV special.
Okay, so we're all three of us are parents. Do you think that Gen Z and modern youth have that same sort of magic? Not to sound and couch ourselves like a bunch of old farts here, but do children have the same sort of magical meteor shower of things that you just cited coming together, the magic of mystery of Saturday morning cartoons and rock bands as superheroes and all this stuff you just cited? Do you think that element exists in a different way for kids?
Oh, today? Sure. I think it always exists. It's hard to say what those elements will be for each generation.
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was little and we took her to meet Curious George. I mean, as a baby and as a toddler, that's all she watched was Curious George
on PBS.
And a Curious George costume character was going to be at a local museum, and she was in absolute awe of meeting Curious George. So I think every generation, every kid has that. What is it? Who knows? But I think, we can't sit here and criticize that they're not into the same stuff as we are, because they're just not going to be. It was it's a different time. It's a different era. It was a different life. But, I know if my daughter met some of her YouTubers that she just loves, she'd have that same moment. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your first Kiss concert?
Creatures of the Night tour.
Me too. Excellent. Excellent. It was 19. We actually, Sam. I went with Sam to my. It was my first concert ever, and it was the Rockford show, which I'm so happy they put out with the box set, the Creatures that just came out. It was fantastic. But seeing that show, where it was kind of their comeback, it floored me for yeah, right, comeback. But it was a New Year's Eve show, so that made it all the more special. And they rang in the New Year. It was super awesome. And we found out in the bathroom that Ace wasn't there. We were like, what? What do you mean Ace isn't there? And the guy's like, yeah, look at your shirt that you bought. And we turned it around. We're like, who the hell is this?
Yep.
I'll
Yep.
never forget
Yeah. I
that
mean,
moment. I'm standing at the urinal and I hear people talking at the sink about who's the guy on the shirt. And we look at the jersey and you see Vinny with the onk on. We didn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And Ace was always my favorite member. So I was heartbroken.
You were devastated.
I was devastated, but at the same time, that show instantly transported me out of that devastation. I will say, though, that I developed tinnitus or tinnitus or however you say it that night. That was the loudest concert I've ever been to in my years of life. And I developed a ringing in the ears that night that has never gone away. That concert was blisteringly loud. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But so my first concert first show was September 22nd, 1979, Dynasty, which probably was a train wreck given the state of the band at that point. But for a Kiss fan,
it was the height of access. They were so
and I
big,
remember looking
so
down to the right of the stage, and you could see Bill Aucoin and Cher was there. Cher was down in the pit. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, man. It was just such a surreal vibe. An absolutely great show. Just a great.
So did Vinny win you over, Mike?
I wouldn't say he won me over. It was just more what I think I realized more was, and again, like you guys, I didn't know Ace wasn't going to be there. When I remember seeing the print ads for the show, and it wasn't Ace, but I figured, I don't know, maybe Ace changed his makeup. I don't know, that who knows?
Right.
I mean, again, pre-internet, you don't know anything that's going on. You're not getting gossip. If you got lucky, you might have picked up a magazine that had a story, but I didn't know. I remember hearing that Ace, that right around that time, Ace was in a car accident. He wasn't going to be able to tour, but that happened after the show, and I was just like, I don't know who this guy is, but what it proved to me was the band was bigger than the band members. I mean, because, Peter Criss wasn't there. Ace Frehley wasn't there. Gene and Paul were the only originals in the band. And
it was still Kiss.
I did not care. It was Kiss. That's all that mattered. They came out and blew me away. I mean, it was just was everything I could have ever hoped for a first Kiss concert. So, no, Vinny didn't win me over, didn't turn me off. It was just, I'm in the presence of Kiss. That's all that I cared about.
Right. And that being your first show, that's kind of how I was. I was like, Ace isn't here, no big deal. I know Sam was devastated, but to me, I was just like you said, it was Kiss, and it was my very first concert, and that blew me away. It was so
right.
good.
Yeah, they were hungry again, and just they were the energy. They were out to for blood on that tour.
Yeah, no, they had vengeance. They were proving themselves all over. Sadly, it was too late because so many Kiss fans had left the army by that point in time because of the previous albums. But if you had stuck through it and saw that show and listened to that album, you without question were going, they're back. This is Kiss. This is what I love. It was, I mean, I couldn't have picked a better first tour to go to was Creatures.
You raise a really interesting point, because one thing I think a lot of Kiss fans like to do, among many things, is kind of posit hypotheticals what ifs scenarios, right? You guys do that on your show periodically. Um, do you think that had Kiss not, you referenced the previous albums that sort of led to their slide in national popularity? Do you think that had Kiss come back after the solo albums and released a ferocious Creatures of the Night style heavy metal record, no Elder, no Unmasked, no Dynasty, but just stayed with the rock and roll blueprint, do you think their popularity would have remained, or do you think it was inevitable that they were peaking? They'd done the movie, they'd done the solos. Do you think they were peaking regardless, or do you think things would have been different?
I think it would have still played out the same way. The makeup had become cheesy.
Huh.
I mean, that's basically what it is. The music industry, the music community, average rock and roll metal fans only saw the makeup by that point in time. The makeup and the pyro, and never listened to the music. Which, I think Creatures of the Night actually proved. I mean, if you actually had listened to it, you'd realize it was a heavy metal album on par with anything that was coming out at that time, metal wise. But nobody listened to it because it was Kiss, and they're just a makeup band. They had to take that makeup off and then lick it up, which, I mean, as an album goes, is a perfect match for Creatures. All of a sudden was given full credibility. Why? Because the band now wasn't wearing makeup. They were real musicians all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense, but that's the way it went. I mean, the makeup had gone too far. The band had become too grandiose. And frankly, we would have never have gotten Creatures of the Night without getting Dynasty, Unmasked, and the Elder. They had to actually hit rock bottom in order to record Creatures of the Night.
I stand with Paul if my memory is correct that I actually find Creatures to be a superior album to Lick It Up. If we're to do a cage match, Lick It Up's a great album. I mean, it rips beginning to end, but I think Creatures is even superior in terms of songwriting, and just Eric Carr's drumming is just, the production of those drums is unbelievable.
Yep.
I don't think there's a better heavy metal drum album personally than that album.
Right.
I think, like Mike said, I think that was probably the heaviest album released that year out of anybody. That was a really heavy.
I mean,
album,
and frankly, it was an extremely heavy album for Kiss. Even when you compare to the first 6 studio albums up through Love Gun, Creatures of the Night was extremely heavy compared to anything Kiss had ever done. And frankly, if even to this point, if you sort of exclude Carnival of Souls, in my opinion, Creatures of the Night is the heaviest album Kiss has ever recorded.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I agree.
So you worked with Kiss. Can you tell the story of that? Because, I mean, how does somebody go from a young kid clutching a vinyl of Rock and Roll Over and putting the needle down on I Want You to building your own website in the infancy of HTML? That, even in and of itself, to me, stuns me. How you must be a pretty focused learner in order to figure that crap out back in 95, whenever it was.
Well, I mean, actually, it wasn't complicated because it was 1995, which is basically when the internet became open for the public to use. The internet always existed, but you had to access it through universities, schools, government agencies, and the government made a decision that they would allow the commercialization of the internet. And it was around 95, maybe it was a year or two earlier that it happened, but 95 is when I built my first website. And, for perspective, let's keep in mind, Google didn't exist yet. Amazon didn't exist yet. Yahoo did, but it literally existed as two students in a dorm room in Stanford University who were handwriting a directory of websites. Because the internet wasn't like it is now. I mean, when I launched my website in '95, May of '95, it was the 5th website on the entire internet devoted to Kiss.
Oh, wow.
So, we're talking, and that's not that long ago, '95, but that's the dark ages of the internet. So,
Really?
what got me into it is I was managing the computer network for an advertising department at a home improvement chain in Chicago. So my job was to stay up on technology. You might have heard of them, Handy Andy Home Improvement.
Oh, of course. I live in Chicago, and Tom lives in
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah,
So
we're both from Chicago.
Handy Andy Home Improvement. I was in charge of their headquarters were in Schaumburg, right on Gulf Road near the Woodfield Mall. And I was in charge of the computer network in the ad department because it was all Macs in the ad department. I was a Mac person, so I was able to oversee all of that. Well, I kept reading in trade journals about this new programming language called HTML. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see what this is about. I mean, I studied programming language in college and stuff like that. But an HTML is the programming code that you use to build websites. In '95, websites had no resemblance to what websites are today. I mean, they were basically a page that had a bunch of text, links that linked to another page, and some graphics. You couldn't even put video on it. You couldn't put audio on it. I mean, it was bare bones minimum. So learning it wasn't hard because there wasn't a lot of coding to understand. And the only way you would learn to code is you would go find somebody else's website. You'd go up and say view source. It'd give you a page on the web browser of the source code, copy it all, paste it into your word processor because there was no programs written yet to build websites. There weren't even books written yet on how to build websites. So everybody was stealing code from somebody else's website. Well, that's how you do it. Oh, that's the way it works. Put it into your word processor, change the code a little bit to do this, to do that, upload it to a server, refresh your browser, boom, there you go. It's that you just built a website. So I figured if I'm going to teach myself HTML, I might as well teach myself on something that's fun. So I'll build a KISS website. I mean, that was the whole purpose. It's just like, all right, it was '95, going into '96, the reunion. I will build a website for the KISS convention tour in 1995. It was like 3 pages. It was like one page that listed all the dates, one page that listed photos of the merchandise that was available, and I don't know what the third page might have been, maybe information on how to buy tickets or something like that. I mean, there was no transactions online. There was none of that existed. No. It was a 3-page website so I could teach myself HTML, and the timing just happened to be absolutely perfect. The convention tour quickly led into the reunion tour. I've got this website. It starts taking off. I understand the music industry and the music business because I've done some work in the music industry. I got a connection with Doc McGee's office, so they were happy to give me information. I mean, a website was nothing back then. Nobody cared about it. Yeah, sure. Here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. Oh, you want to get 2 tickets for the show coming up? Sure, you can buy 2 tickets from us. You don't have to go through Ticketmaster. it just it just snowballed at that point because all of a sudden the reunion's happening and the internet is exploding all at the
Wow.
same time. And I've got this website that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've got show reviews and I've got photos that are people posting and I'm getting little audio snippets and I don't think I even had video early on, just audio, MP3 files. And it just again, 95 it was snowballing to the point where in 1998, only 3 years later, was that magical moment where now I had done a little work for Kiss and Gene, for a year or two prior to that on History 2.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Gene this is when Gene was active on AOL and he was emailing and messaging people on AOL and he's like, I want you to help me with the History 2 book. I want you to I want you to gather material from fans. They'll send it to you. You send it to me, blah, blah, blah. I cut a deal with Gene. They hired me for that project on History 2.
Wow.
And
Cool.
fast forward to August of 98. I have a voicemail from Gene Simmons when I came home from work because I was working at that point in time. I was now working at corporate offices for Montgomery Ward's in downtown Chicago. I was managing their ad network at Montgomery Ward's. And
Right there on the river. I know
right
that
on the
building.
river. Yep. And, simple message from Gene. Hey, Mike, I've got a business proposition for you. Give me a call when you get a chance. Okay. I get that. I call him back immediately. He tells me, he wants to build a KISS website. And basically, I'm, I'm drastically paraphrasing here. I'm probably the best person out there to build a KISS website. I am a diehard KISS fan. I've been running a website on KISS for 3 years.
Yep.
Right.
There's frankly probably nobody else in the world better qualified to build a KISS website than me. He said, call Doc McGee and see if you can make it work. And
Business manager.
we did. And, that was August of 98. October of 98, I was moving from Chicago to San Francisco, where I was hired to work for the band's merchandising company and to build the website for them.
Wow.
It just snowballed and happened so quickly. I mean, he basically just gave me this offer and said, I can't guarantee you what's going to happen. I don't know how long this will last. I'm giving you an opportunity. It's up to you to say yes or no.
That's
And
great.
I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's a dream for a diehard KISS fan, but at the same time, I was like,
Right.
well, I've got a full-time corporate gig at Montgomery Ward's. It's paying me very well, full benefits, everything else. So I have to negotiate with the merchandising company. I'm moving from Chicago to San Francisco, which is a huge change in cost of living. Um,
Massive.
Mhm.
they gave me everything I asked for. They relocated me out there. And, I basically became a professional paid fan working for KISS to go on the road, go to shows, go backstage, take photos, do videos, you name it. I mean, it was kind of a deer in headlights moment for a few months of I'm trying to figure out am I really doing this? I mean, all of a sudden here I am at a photo studio in LA for the Got Milk photo shoot, and I'm just there. Take photos of anything you want, videotape anything you want, do whatever you want. I'm on the red carpet at the Detroit Rock City movie premiere in Hollywood, stopping and asking questions. And it it
Wow.
it was a dream come true. I mean, but it was a job at the same time. So I didn't sit down there as
Wow.
like a geeky, freaked out Kiss fan going, "Oh my God, can you do this? Can I get that? Can you give me this? Can I have autographs? Can I have photos?" There was none of that
Right.
because, frankly, I mean, the coolest thing in the world was the fact that I had a laminate that said all access on it, and I could go to any Kiss show and go anywhere I want in a venue and do anything I want, and nobody could say anything. I mean, that
Right.
that
And
that
then
was cool. That was cooler than a photo to me.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you were doing something you truly loved, and pioneering at the time because at that time, '98 into like early 2000s, Kiss's online presence, I mean, it blew up. I mean,
Yeah.
they got huge, bringing back T-shirt runs, and then now they're doing everything, all the vinyl reissues. They haven't stopped.
Yeah.
It's a wonder, which the merchandising. I don't, when we were kids in '77, '78, I don't think we'd seen bands yet do the merchandising blitz that they did.
Nope.
No.
It was something to behold for me. I was like, what the? I
For
mean,
all of us.
there was Elvis, there was the Beatles, but there was nothing like Kiss.
Right.
No.
Right.
No. No.
So and you
So
got to be right in the middle of that. That was fantastic.
you
That
don't
had to
have
be
to
a great,
answer this, Mike, but
great
did you have to sign an NDA to go on tour with them?
Nope.
Nothing. So you don't have to kiss and tell. I had to drop that. Sorry, no pun intended. You must have seen some really weird shit. It's '98. I mean,
I
Ace is
don't know.
back
I
on
mean, I wouldn't
drugs,
say
booze.
I didn't see anything that was like, oh my God, that's just shocking that no, there was none of that. I mean, because first of all, I wasn't an employee of Kiss. I was working for the merchandising company, and
Right.
Kiss was one of hundreds of artists that were clients of the merchandising
I see.
company, which I eventually
Right.
went on to do similar things for other artists at the merchandising company. But I was the
Wow.
Kiss guy at the merch company. I mean, they were the Mike, what do you think of this T-shirt design? Mike, what do you think of this photo? Mike, what do you think of this product idea? You're the Kiss guy. What do you think? And I'd give them my Kiss fan opinion. Um,
Yeah.
but being backstage, it it's not like what people imagine backstage to be, and it clearly was not like what backstage was in the '70s for Kiss. I mean,
Right.
right? It's a lot of
these
craft
guys were
services.
grown, married, kids. It was a
Yeah.
business to them at that point in time, but it was still very awe-inspiring to walk down, go into the backstage in the middle of the afternoon, see them walking around, see them sound check, see them arrive. I wasn't in the dressing room with them. I mean, the dressing room is a
Right.
is kind of a
Sacred.
sacred spot for them, but I was
Yeah.
backstage all the time. I mean, I saw everybody coming and going, and I would sit down every once in a while and have a short meeting with Gene and Paul about something or talk to Doc about something. There wasn't anything that I would sit here and go, no, I can never reveal that.
Right. I interviewed Gene twice in the '90s for various publications I was writing for, and one time he said, "This has been such an interesting interview. Where do you live?" And I told him Chicago. He said, "Well, we're going to be in Madison next. Come up." And I went backstage, and I will never forget the moment seeing the costumes roll by on a rolling rack, like a hanger with the
Yep.
costumes hung up. And like at that moment, for a 20 something guy, I needed like Kiss Depends. I mean, I was ready just to crap my pants to see those costumes up
Yeah.
close and personal.
Well,
I
yeah, I
actually
mean,
walked up and tried to touch Ace's costume, and Andre halted me, the security guy. He's like, "Hey, hey, 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 stay away from the suit."
yeah, I mean, everybody's got to remember, go back to, when I was 12 years old and I'm watching them on the Paul Lynde Halloween special. And now all of a sudden, yeah, I'm backstage and seeing them walking around and getting ready and partial costumes, seeing the costumes on the racks, seeing them getting repaired. Um, you know, my if any of us had seen that in the 70s when we were kids,
Oh my God.
our heads would have literally exploded. Like, oh
Literally,
my God. It would have been like seeing, you know, Superman and knowing it was Clark Kent.
right.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of this. It's the 50th year of Kiss, and this is the final run of shows. Those last two shows are scheduled for Madison Square Garden in December.
You going, Mike?
Nope.
Yeah, are you going?
No.
Why?
I'm gonna wait for. I'm crossing my fingers and rolling the dice. I'm gonna wait for the Vegas residency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that's going to be a thing.
I mean, I
still think that'll happen.
I'm going by. They've said many times, these are the final shows of the final Kiss tour, and they've also said that doesn't rule out doing one-off shows. It doesn't rule out doing a residency. I just I don't want to spend that kind of money. I don't. I mean,
No.
I saw them on the end of the road tour when they played here in Oakland. It was spectacular. It was a great.
It's great.
If that does end up being my very last show ever, it's a perfect ending. I don't need to go to Madison Square Garden. Tickets are going to be astronomically priced. Airfare, there's hotel, everything. And and honestly, you're not going to, and I guess I should say me, wouldn't get anywhere near the band. I mean, that's New York City. That's their hometown. That's the final two shows of the tour. It's going to be such a madhouse of friends and relatives and celebrities. Over the decades of working in the music business, I've just learned, don't go to shows in major markets like New York or LA or wherever their hometown is.
Right.
Because it's going to be overwhelmingly packed with friends, relatives, celebrities. Go see them in a smaller city, a smaller market where there's nobody there. And yeah, then they'll be more than happy to accommodate you. So, no, I just was like, no, I have no need to go there. Again, I'm rolling the dice. I don't think it's the final shows ever being played. I could be wrong. But I don't think so.
Do you think they'll do anything different at those final shows, or are they going to do end of the road shows? And the way they've been these highly produced.
I would imagine it's going to be pretty much the same end of the road stage. Maybe a lot more pyro if you can figure out how you do more pyro than they've already been doing. Maybe some special video. But for the most part, I think you're going to get the Kiss show you've been seeing for the last 3+ years here. They're not. They're.
No changes to the set list?
I don't see any change to the set list. I mean, why? They're not going to all of a sudden do the last two shows of a bunch of deep cuts. People, I mean, seriously, like it or not, people want to hear Rock and Roll All Night, Love Gun, and Detroit Rock City. And, they want to hear those songs because those are the songs of our memories, of our special moments, of our childhood. These shows, this tour is not for the small group of uber diehard fans.
Yeah, right.
Could there be some minor changes? Sure, but I don't think it's going to be an entirely new stage. I don't think there's going to be new costumes. I don't think it's going to be an entirely shaken up set.
Yeah, I think it's going to be rinse repeat.
It's going to be pretty much rinse and repeat. But what they say between songs, yeah, that could be a lot more emotional and a lot more personal at these shows than.
Are they entertaining streaming it?
Are they what?
Entertaining streaming it?
I don't know. I can't imagine that it isn't that wouldn't happen. I mean, I got to, if I'm a betting man, these last two shows are going to be recorded for live album, filmed for DVD, or whether it's a DVD or a digital download stream that you purchase for $50. Sure, we know Kiss. We've been around Kiss long enough to know this is an incredible money-making opportunity. It's going to be recorded. How and when that gets released? No clue. But yeah, if I was a betting man, yeah, of course, these final shows are going to be recorded.
And of course, everybody's asking, no special guests, i.e., past members?
I don't think so.
No walk-on?
No. You know, and again, I have no more inside info than anybody else, but just based on what I know about the band for all these years and having worked with them, I could imagine the initial thought was, let's invite Ace and let's invite Peter. And first of all, they aren't going to be in makeup. There's no way Ace and Peter would go up there in makeup and costume. Not going to happen. So if they get past that hurdle with Ace and Peter, then it's Peter, you can go out and sing Beth. Ace, you can go out and sing New York Groove. You can all come out and join us for the grand finale of Rock and Roll All Night. But again, no makeup, no costumes. But I don't think it was going to ever be Ace and Peter back for an entire show. Tommy and Eric are in Kiss. They are Kiss members. They've been in Kiss longer than the original two guys.
Longer than anybody.
So it would be a huge disrespect to those two guys to kick them out for the last two shows and say, okay, these two guys are coming back in. And, you know, no disrespect to Ace or Peter, but it would probably be a subpar performance with those two guys as well.
I don't think they have the chop anymore.
I don't think they have the chop. One song, sure. A full show, a couple full shows.
No way.
I don't, no way. And, you know, Gene and Paul, frankly, don't need the headaches that come along with those two guys. It's sort of like, you know, we're inviting you, you know, as Gene and Paul said, they put the offer out. I don't know what the offer was, but we put the offer out.
Right.
And if the offer was accepted, great, it's fine. If it becomes, well, I want this and I don't want that, and you got to change this, screw that. These two shows are going to be sold out without Ace and Peter. There's going to be, they're sold out without those two guys, so they don't need them to sell tickets. They would only bring them on as a thank you, as a thank you to the original four. But you know, and again, I have no idea what Ace and Peter were demanding, if they made any demands, but Gene and Paul were probably like, no, this is kind of take it or leave it. You come in and you do it this way, or you don't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to say it would be special because it's only a mere number of blocks away from the 23rd Street Loft. You know, I mean, I can't remember where Madison Square Garden is, 31st or 34th, and the Loft is on 23rd. I mean, they're literally steps away from where they started.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great place to end it. You know, now if I took off my hat of what I think based on what I've experienced and what I would guess about these guys and just said, okay, I'm just the crazy Kiss fan. Yeah, as a crazy Kiss fan, I want Ace there. I want Peter there. I want Bruce Kulick there. Yeah, I'd even want Vinny there. There's no chance in hell Vinny will show up. You know, that's putting the other hat back on. But as a Kiss fan, I would love it if they did something with, you know, every surviving member of Kiss and did something video-wise to pay extra special tribute to Eric Carr, Mark St. John.
Bruce, you know, even Bruce, he was there for a long time.
Yeah, he deserves to be acknowledged in some capacity for sure.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
well, we'll wrap up here pretty quick. You know your time is valuable, but we've got a few more questions for you. How many episodes have you done of Three Sides of the Coin at this point? It's hundreds.
I think we're coming close to 550.
I mean,
Wow.
I know the answer to this question, so maybe it's rhetorical. But I mean, do you run out? Are you ever going to run out of topics?
We've asked ourselves that many times. It's like, you know, over approaching 550 weekly episodes about one band, and we joke, is there anything we left to talk about? But the thing with this band is they always seem to do something that gives you another
Always.
topic to discuss, or, fans do something to talk about, or there's a new release, or, we just keep playing it by ear. I mean, it's just like, as long as we're having fun, I mean, and we approach it this way. It's the core of it is myself, Tommy, and Mark, and Lisa's there every few weeks. She will join us.
Right.
It's basically you and your friends getting together once a week to talk about something you love, and that's what we do. As long as we're having fun talking about it, we don't care about the rest of it. Honestly, we could give a crap if anybody likes anything we've ever done, because it's the three of us basically meeting at a bar on a Tuesday night, having some beers, talking about what's going on in our lives, our favorite band, some other music, and a couple hours later, hey, gotta go home, dinner's ready, whatever it might be. We have a great time. That's all the premise of the show is.
It's worth it. Yep.
Tom, we were talking about the fan bases. Bring that up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to know, with Star Wars being one that comes to mind, can you explain the toxicity with Kiss fans?
So that toxicity will exist in any property that's been around 40 plus years.
Huh.
So you got Kiss, you got Star Wars, you got Star Trek. I'm actively working with WASP. WASP's been around 40 years. Any band that has been around 40 years or longer, still active, odds are, first of all, they're not going to have the original members left, and all the original members left in them for a multitude of reasons. Some of them may have passed away. They may have been fired. They may have quit. A band has gone, all bands go through multiple styles of music and changes that they pursue. It just gives the fans plenty to debate. Who was the best guitar player? What was the best album? What was the best era? Did this person do more or less? And you can do the same thing. Was the original Star Trek better than Star Trek The Next Generation versus Star Trek Discovery? And who's the better captain? And who's the better first officer? They will go into, fans of all those properties, will get into the same types of debates Kiss fans will. And you can see, I mean,
but
there's Kiss.
They like the bitch.
Well, it's very personal to us.
I mean, it's like a common bond. It's like, how you had to, when you first found Kiss, and you had those people going, Kiss sucks, you're an idiot. But then you found somebody that liked Kiss, and you're like, you had this bond. So now there's this group of people that have this common bond, and there's still this toxicity that exists.
But it's it's because it is very personal to everybody. It's been part of, listen, Kiss has been part of my life since 1976. My dream came true. I worked with them. I wouldn't have met my wife without Kiss being part of my life, which means I wouldn't have my daughter if it wasn't for Kiss.
Wow.
Kiss made my business what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's many fans in other properties that can say the same thing. It's very personal. And you meaning a fan, can get very caught up in somebody disagreeing with what you like. Oh, you like that album? That album sucks. I can't stand it. You have to be terrible if you love that album. Don't call me terrible. I still love that band. I still love the franchise. I still love the movie. I still love the TV show, whatever it is. It's hard for people who are not part of a fan environment like we are for decades to understand it. Oh, you're a fan of a band? Well, yeah, but your band's only been around for 2 years. You don't have the depth. You don't have dozens and dozens of albums and band member changes and crazy tours that succeeded and failed. You know, all of that brings out everything we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And sadly, to me, it's just some fans are so blinded by their passion.
Yeah.
Oh, the only Kiss that matters is the original 4 guys, and Kiss today isn't Kiss. Well, it is Kiss, and there's 12-year-old kids discovering Kiss today and having the same moment we had when we were 12 years old. Are they less of a fan because they discover Kiss now? It's not their fault. They weren't even alive 40 years ago. They weren't born. Now, if they become passionate about this band, we can all hope that they follow the paths we did, where it's like, okay, that album got you into it, that tour got you into it. Now they start going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Holy crap, you mean this band's been around since 1974 and they've got all of these albums? Well, I'm going to start listening, start buying, and start watching videos.
That's awesome.
And start learning more about them. You know, I think, to me, the biggest thing is fans just have to be open and understanding that not everybody likes the same thing you like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I hate chocolate ice cream. I only love vanilla ice cream. You know, but I don't get down on the person who loves chocolate.
Right.
Doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. Doesn't change anything about me. But if I go into a Baskin Robbins, I'm not ordering anything chocolate. Never will.
Although all this said, you guys do get a lot of hate at Three Sides of the Coin. It seems like, I mean, even your marketing mantra as a marketing man yourself is forget the haters, we won. I mean, it does seem like you get quite a bit of commentary.
Well, yeah, but that's because we are very honest in our opinions.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and you know, we've always said from episode 1, this is not a objective podcast. This isn't a fair and balanced show. This isn't giving everybody an equal voice. This is the 3 voices of us. That's all that matters. Yeah. It's our opinions. Yeah. It is a commentary show. It's not a factual show. It's not a news show. It's commentary, but we are not afraid to express our comments, even if I know when I tell people that I think Crazy Nights is one of the best albums Kiss has ever released,
you're a huge fan.
That the vast majority of people are going to go, you're a fucking idiot. I'm like, I don't care. Call me an idiot. It doesn't change the fact that I love the album.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to change anything because a listener says they don't agree with us.
Right.
Because we're not looking for people to agree with us.
Right.
It's never been, our goal has never been to please everybody. We only wanted to please the 3 of us. That's it.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just 3 friends sitting around bullshitting about their favorite band.
Yeah. You know, and to forget the haters, that's more that actually is more directed at the fact of growing up in the 70s.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember 1979, Dynasty's out.
Me too.
I'm like, God, I'm in high school. I'm like, I want to wear my Kiss shirt to school today, but am I ready for all the shit I'm going to take for wearing a Kiss shirt in 1979?
No.
And I'm like, screw it. I'm the Kiss Army. I'm going in and wearing it. Yeah, all day long. Kiss sucks. Zeppelin rules. Kiss sucks. They can't play. Listen to Deep Purple. Got that over and over.
We all did.
And we still get it to this day.
We do.
To this day, 50 years later. Kiss sucks, man.
I know.
They're a bunch of has-beens. They can't play. Well, forget those haters. We won. We, the Kiss fans, won.
Right.
Because our band is here 50 years later, still selling out arenas.
Still crushing.
And where's that band you said was so much better?
Right.
Where are they?
That's great.
What are they doing?
That's a great point.
Yep.
Well, two last components.
I mean, that's why we won as the Kiss Army.
Yep.
We stood up to all of that hate. We took it. It was rough, but you know what? This band,
Elder is exhausted.
This band is still here. And frankly, if it wasn't for their ages, they could keep doing this for decades.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I believe that.
You know, that you just articulated that beautifully. I mean, I took my lumps too. And I think there's a lot of, Joey Ramone claims to have been at the punk to the whole Kiss ethos that I don't think ever gets discussed. They started the same scene as the Dolls and the reverse show at the Coventry/Popcorn Club. They started from that Bones, and they were all part of that era. But I think there's something very punk rock about the way Kiss fans have stood up to the lumps that you just mentioned that we have taken over the years, and just said, I don't give a shit. That sort of.
Well, the band and their fans have never cared what critics thought.
Yeah. It's true.
The band is doing it for themselves and their fans, and their fans love it.
Yep.
Who cares if the critics like us or not? We still got 15,000 people seeing us tonight. Yep. Screw you, critic.
Yep.
We're doing this on our 50th anniversary right now, and the fans are the same way. Yep. Another fan comes by and says Kiss sucks, they can't play. I don't give a crap. Your opinion means nothing to me. It means zip. It's not going, do you really think after me being a fan for over 40 years, if today somebody said, well, they really can't play, I'm going to go, you know what? I finally realized you're right. I'm changing my mind. I don't like Kiss anymore.
Right.
After decades.
It's
not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And,
No.
just I always get down to the core point is, what does my taste in music have anything to do with your life? How does my taste in music impact you?
Yeah.
You're not being forced to listen to Kiss. You can listen to anything else. If they come on the radio, you can change the dial. Nobody's forcing you to go to a show. So if I want to go to a show, why does that bother you?
Yeah.
Right. It's Fred Trolls.
We've got two last components here. We'll wrap it up. One is, and you've talked about this on your show. You guys always kind of talk about if there's any news at the beginning of your show from the Kiss camp. We've seen two remarkable box sets in Destroyer, and the Creatures box set to me is magnificent. What would you like to see as the next box set release, personally, as a fan?
Personally, as a fan, probably Rock and Roll Over, just because that album means so much to me. That was my first album. That was my first in point for this band. Yeah. I would probably, honestly love to see something out of the 80s. Yeah. Crazy Nights, an Asylum, something like that. My gut tells me that whenever there will be another one, it'll probably be the debut album.
Yeah.
Only because next year is the 50th anniversary of the debut album's release. Seems like it would just make sense to do a debut album box set.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything out there in terms of unreleased material from those recording sessions at Bell Sounds?
I don't know. Yeah. But what I've come to learn is there's always something out there to be discovered.
Yeah.
Especially, if Gene and Paul take the time to dig into their storage boxes and they find stuff.
Right.
I mean, I'm not Kiss, and I just moved and I opened up a box that's been in storage for over 12 years and it's filled with cassette tapes.
It's awesome.
Audio recordings, bootleg recordings, demos that I've accumulated. It's like, I have no idea what's in here. And I can only imagine the stuff that those guys would probably find if they actually dug into storage lockers and boxes and, stuff that's been covered in dust for 40 years.
Yeah, you wonder if
there's stuff out there. There's stuff out there.
All right, so we want to wrap up, and we're going to do this in every episode. Next week, we're going to talk about Saturday morning cartoons, totally different topic, but we're going to do this segment every episode. It's just something fun. We call it the Mr. Speed Round, which is a nod, of course, to the Kiss song, Off Rock and Roll Over. The song is 3 minutes and 18 seconds, so we will run 3 minutes and 18 seconds of asking each other questions, and you'll get the gist of it because we'll start with you, Mike, and I start the clock right now. What is your favorite costume from each member from any era? Original.
Gene Simmons, Creatures of the Night, spiked boots.
Oh.
Let's see, Peter Criss, probably his Dynasty costume.
Wow, unexpected.
Let's see, Paul Stanley. Honestly, I love his Creatures of the Night costume as well because it was so non-costume, if that makes sense. It was much more just being a rock star, but it still had the boots, it still had that sort of stuff.
It was that whole frontman bravado. It was
yeah. Ace Frehley costume, not Dynasty. I didn't like that. I'm gonna probably have to go with Love Gun for Ace.
Tom, can you fire yours off quick? Gene?
Yeah, Gene Creatures, definitely Gene Creatures, and Paul Creatures. Peter, I'm going to go Dynasty, and Ace, I'm going to say the Elder Killers.
Wow, interesting.
I like that lightning bolt. Great.
Ace for me, Love Gun. Gene,
what about you?
Destroyer. Paul, wow, it's a tough one. Destroyer. Peter, Hotter Than Hell. I love that kind of street leather pants, belt buckle. Just really look of the street.
Cool. That does work well on him.
Yeah, I love that. What are your top 3 Kiss albums, Mike? If you got to go, your top 3 Desert Island Kiss albums.
That can change based on mood.
Right.
And first of all, can you include live albums in that?
Okay,
No.
So we're going studio only. Sounds like
so top 3. So studio albums. It's always going to start with Rock and Roll Over.
Yep.
Nice.
Then 2 and 3, probably Destroyer and Crazy Nights.
Wow.
Tom.
Wow, that's awesome. Me, I am going to go Rock and Roll Over. Absolutely. I'll go in order. Rock and Roll Over, The Elder, and Creatures.
Wow. I'm gonna go Hotter Than Hell. Now Rock and Roll Over. It's changed over, and The Elder.
We beat to it.
I'm a freak for The Elder. I love that album.
Yep.
All right, last one. We got a big list of questions here. Most underrated Kiss song.
Most underrated Kiss song. Well, that's gonna suck up time because that's a thinker. That's a thinker.
See, I thought about it already. We're excluding the solo albums. I know Tom loves "You're the Kind of Sugar Papa Likes," but you know,
My favorite.
it's about Peter's coke habit.
Wow, that's tough. There's hundreds of songs. So
I
what's
know,
most
I know.
underrated? I'm tending to lean towards something from the '80s
Okay,
because the '80s are so underrated by most people,
that's true.
and I tend to go to Asylum as being the most underrated Kiss album out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow,
I don't know. King of the Mountain?
I love that song.
Whoa, that's good.
I
Yeah, me
love that
too.
song.
I'm gonna I'm gonna say 1,000,000 to 1. They should do it.
Yeah, it's a great song. Oh, now you guys are making me recalibrate. I'm gonna go Young and
Yeah.
Wasted. It just vanished from
Oh,
the
that's
set list.
fantastic. They should do
That
that too.
guitar riff is unbelievable.
It's
All right,
fantastic.
we have kept you long enough,
So
sir. What's on?
I
Last
have
question.
one more question
Yeah.
for Mike. Hey, you're working with WASP now, and I noticed that this Seven Savage box set is coming out, which it's right in my wheelhouse. It's their first 5 records. Did you have anything to do with that?
Not putting it together. That was a record label over in Europe that put that together. I'm
Really?
doing the marketing and everything for it.
It looks awesome.
Yeah, it, it
I can't
looks
wait.
it looks beautiful. It's all of their capital years albums, half speed remastered, an eighth album of just
That's
B-sides and outtakes and stuff like that,
live.
live stuff, and then, a 60-page book that Blackie was involved in copy and digging up photos. I mean, it's a beautiful looking. I haven't seen a physical one of it, but just the photos. It's like, yeah, this is well done.
It's amazing looking. I can't wait for that.
Mike,
Cool.
I like to end things on kind of looking forward. You've been so visionary in your work in marketing, in the music industry. Where do you see things going next with everybody talking about AI, artists complaining about monetization and not being able to make a living unless they're constantly on the road? Where do you see the music business going? And we'll end with that question, kind of looking forward.
Um, it's not so much where it's going to go. It's been there for a while, and in 2003, the VIP program with Kiss sort of tested the water and proved the concept.
Right.
But experience, it's all about experiences now. Um, you know, music can be pirated, video can be pirated. You can't monetize that stuff like you could before. You can't pirate an experience, and an experience is what triggers emotions and memories in the fans, and the fans will pay for those memories and emotions.
Fantastic. Well, hey man, thanks so
Right.
much. You're amazing. We've got a lot in common. I lived in the Bay
Yeah,
Area
thanks,
for a
Mike.
while, and I grew up in Minnesota. So you're a Minnesotan as well, correct?
Yep,
So you
yep.
still a Vikings fan?
Sadly.
Yeah. Chuck
I will
Foreman.
be, sort of like Kiss. I'm there till the end, and it's got its tough moments.
I lived in Minnesota when they went Super Bowl 11 when they played the Broncos with Craig Morton. I don't know whether you were there, but yeah, it was devastating. Fran Tarkenton was a quarterback. Chuck Foreman was my favorite running back.
I was there when Kiss was known for the world record of losing more Super Bowls than any other football team.
Hey, man, thank you so much for your fabulous time. Keep up all your great work
Yeah.
and keep carrying the flag. You do such a great job, and we're really honored that you'd be on here for our first episode.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.
Thanks
Take
so
care,
much,
guys.
Mike.
Our best to your family.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.